Hey folks, it's Brian Blackmore with Church Production Magazine and Dave.video. Well, today we're going to be talking about music videos. So what do you do when the worship team or the music team wants to create music videos and the film team doesn't have the bandwidth to make that happen? Well, that's exactly the situation that came about at Church of the Highlands. Church of the Highlands is the largest church in Birmingham, in Alabama. Based in Birmingham. I think they have 25 campuses across Alabama. They may be spreading into neighboring states as well. So it's a fascinating story. So with us today, we have Caleb Dick, who's on the worship team at Church of the Highlands, based in Birmingham, Alabama. And Ananth Sundra is part of the business solution team at Adorama. Caleb, it's such a fascinating story. Tell us how you got started making music videos for Church of the Highlands.
Yeah, basically, when the world shut down, we we found ourselves in a position where we just didn't have enough manpower, taking our whole church setup and turning everything that we do into a delivered video product. It was obviously it was a really intense time for everybody in the whole world. For folks in the church world, but we're really blessed that we had a lot of infrastructure that was really supportive of video anyway. We're a multi-site church that broadcasts some part of our service every Sunday to every other campus that we've got in the state of Alabama. And a lot of it just came down to, you went from just Sunday mornings being a delivered video portion of the service with a lot of stuff happening live in the room to every part of every service. That's student services and college services, and anything that we were doing had to be totally online and totally some of it was like live broadcasted, but a lot of it was pre-recorded stuff because you just didn't have enough people to be in the room the whole time, that many days in a row. And so we've got a fantastic broadcast team. We've got a fantastic creative team and students creative team. But when it came to doing some of the special musical elements and to supporting our own original music with video content, we kind of just found ourselves in this position where everybody was slammed. And so where a lot of times we would either, like I said, do something in a live broadcast environment, went from that to a pre-recorded environment. Well, what if the broadcast team has got something that day? Because we were supporting a lot of local churches, having them come in and use our facilities to record their sermons on Sundays. So that meant that the guys that normally would do the job were not available. And so we just kind of jumped in with both feet. We had some gear already purchased for kind of more like internal communications purposes, but it just became okay, we're going to figure out how to do. A lot of us had some experience, but nothing serious.
So just walk us through that, like how you got started. Was it initially music videos for the worship services?
I mean, I think the very first things we did as a team were actually college services. We call it One. It's our college program here at the church, and we needed 4 or 5 services, whole complete package live element services to be recorded and put out in about a week. Just the way that the calendar fell, and our broadcast team was booked. I mean, they were working. So myself and our team basically jumped on. It's kind of funny. Some of those services were playing instruments and, kind of making sure things are happening behind the camera as well. So it started with some like live events and kind of transformed at the same time. We make original music, and as we were kind of collecting gear to do these live events, and some of the special elements that we do for 4th of July or for other kind of bigger, holiday elements around the church that we normally arrange the music for, it became evident that like we had the gear and we started to have the expertise. So we started jumping in and making music videos, and that's kind of our sweet spot anyway. I mean, we're all musicians. We all play on Sunday mornings, and we're all involved in in the live service elements at the church. But we also, it saves some time to do everything in house, within the same department.
Tell me what this looks like, or walk me through what the look was maybe initially and how it's progressed over the last year and a half. Were you trying to make it look like like a Sunday morning, like you were on stage in a Sunday morning service, or were these more like concept videos?
It was kind of a mixture. We definitely, like early on, people wanted that more like cinematic look that you get out of a pre-recorded thing. They wanted that shallow depth of field and 24p and all the kind of, things that in a broadcast environment you just normally don't do. Um, I mean, mostly because it's flying by. We could take multiple takes at a thing. And so it started out in kind of, like I said, like we were doing live events with a crew of like 6 people, where normally it's, a big old massive production crew, and lots of like well-traveled ideas and, things that everybody kind of like knows the parameters of. And so we started with that kind of broadcast thing, but as we got into maybe doing special like pre-recorded elements, it became we could kind of push more into that cinematic thing and do a little more pre-pro, because we started to have a little more margin. And later on, now we're kind of in this. I mean, we just shot 10 music videos that are going to come out this fall of 2021 that are like full. We brought a full crew in. They were on location. They're very, the music, it kind of fit the music, so it's pretty dreamy. It's a little more introspective than like a live element would be. But it's kind of gone. I mean, so we just want to be able to do like whatever the job is, because that's the name of the game in church work for sure. Everybody knows that. When you're in ministry, that's, flexibility is key. But we found ourselves just needing to do a bunch of things, and they started out as live events, and we don't really do those as much anymore because, obviously things have picked back up, and the broadcast team, as good as they are, much more like that's their thing. So we're doing less of that.
So you mentioned flexibility, and you're doing a wide variety of concept videos to more live performance kind of things. Tell me, like, how did that progress from a gear perspective? Like, what were maybe what was one of the first needs that you noticed that you needed to add?
Right. One of the biggest ones, we had. I think the church had purchased for the worship team some C100s a couple years ago, which are great cameras, and they look. I mean, they are a big step up from where I started on DSLRs before I was here. But we found ourselves with kind of okay glass. So one of the biggest purchases, one of the early purchases was cinema glass, because we didn't have, we had decent sensors, but no good glass to put in front of them. And another one of the biggest things, especially with Adorama, was support for cameras and support for lights. I mean, C-stands and baby stands and all the things that, Anant and I have talked a lot about, just the fact that we didn't have the stuff to make things work. I mean, we might have a decent camera, but we didn't have the gear that you don't think about, as a layperson being on a set, that's really facilitating the whole thing. From different lights to stands to carts, all those, they're not glamorous, but they make the thing happen. So.
Well, you mentioned you've got some pretty tight deadlines and things like that. So, when you call Anant and the team at Adorama, well, let's ask him. Anant, what do you remember about the first call that you had with Caleb and the demands and the ambitiousness of their endeavor here?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, Caleb and I connected. We actually just before everything went, haywire with the pandemic. But we'd started developing a relationship from there. But I do remember that first call when they were focusing on this project, and that's where we were trying to meet a couple of different deadlines within a span of a week. And I think the one thing where I understood from Caleb as well is because the team was basically wearing different hats, we were picking up where another team member would be able to maybe call another vendor or call someone locally and be able to source that. So a lot of the role that I had and our team has when we're working with the Houses of Worship market is being able to almost be that extension of the team and be able to kind of facilitate all that back end administration. Checking in with manufacturers on, can we drop ship to this client right away? Can we get this to them within a time limit that kind of will kind of expedite what we can traditionally do coming out of our warehouse on just a typical standard shipping type of job. So I think there were several conversations within that week. So I know him and I we were really tight throughout that process, just trying to make sure that we were meeting all those deadlines. once we kind of got an idea of what each time frame would be, and I started understanding, okay, they were going to have several instances of this as they were growing that particular part of the production. Then we had a really great flow, and it was off to the races from there.
Caleb, can you think of a particular instance where that was the case, where the deadline was important and Adorama was able to help out?
Well, going back to the support thing, my crew is like that I help facilitate, because they're the experts, not me really. But it was at the time, I mean, it was an intern, a part-time guy, and a guy that was just volunteering. That's changed now, but we were so desperate for people. And so, I mean, we didn't even have stands to put stuff on that, right? Like, so there was a shoot that we did, in about a week's notice. I mean, it went from, we're not doing anything, I'm playing bass on a thing at one of our student conferences, to we are now shooting the music. And it went, it was like, I mean, it was coronavirus time, man. It was just nuts. Things were happening so fast, and different vendors might not be able to get a piece in. So now, a whole different crew is in with a different ideal about what they're trying to chase, conceptually, because maybe there wasn't a piece of gear available to rent. I mean, it's just, y'all know how it was. And so we did music for our student conference. And I called, man, I can't remember exactly what piece of gear it was, but I think it was support. I think it was actually like, we don't have enough people to hold stuff. I need to get, I can't Hollywood this thing. Enough to give me some C-stands, you know what I mean? And it worked out.
I think the timing really stood out, because I remember during that first week when we started talking about this project, it was the time of day that you would reach out with the request, because you would get that later in the day, and it would be around like 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, and that's when I think we would really kind of zero in and figure out, okay, how are we going to get this out, next day air or whatever we need to do to get this out to Caleb. So I think that was a real fun part.
It was fun. It was fun for all of us. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
Caleb, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Honestly, we have all learned so much about movie, about filmmaking. We have still so long to go, but I think one of the major things is, again, we've all worked in music, side of things for most of our whole careers here at the church, inside and out of the church. And so we kind of have an understanding of like what costs are to pull off a record. You know what I mean? When you're recording it and you're mixing it and you're mastering, we know those things. That's what we do every day. Getting into the video space, you can Google things, right? But the actual cost of making sure everybody's taken care of when you're bringing other vendors in, maybe when you're bringing other technicians in, when you're, that decision about whether you rent something or whether you buy something. I think, if we'd have known a year ago what it was really going to cost, we probably would have slept a little better. It was so crazy. You get into these things and you go, man, it costs that much. How are we going to do? Where's the money going to come from? And we're obviously, we're a really blessed place, but you just want to do stewardship correctly. You know what I mean? You don't want to buy that thing because it's easy and it not be the right piece of gear. You don't want to buy it because it's available and then it not be because of Corona, because of COVID, and then it not be the piece of gear that you really needed if you'd have had another 6 weeks to sit on it and research it and wait. And you know what I mean? I think a lot of it is just the overall experience of how to do this stuff. We were fast tracked. A lot of late night Zoom calls because everybody was quarantined and you're only working together a day or two at a time. But yeah, I don't know. Hope that answers your question.
Tell us about the relationship and the importance of the relationship, both ways. I'd like for you guys to both answer that, if you would. So start with Caleb.
Yeah. First off, having someone to call, having a person to call, was massive for us the last year. Again, because we're trying to figure out how we do what we do, and because the type of things we were doing were so diverse and fast paced, we needed somebody that knew more than we did. We really try to work relationships. That's a big thing for us because we know that other people have the expertise that while we're new in it, we don't have. So having a person that I could call, and then on top of that being that is a musician and does know what we developed a personal, friendship over the course of our relationship, that over the course of, all those phone calls, those desperate phone calls, that we got to a place where, it wasn't just calling somebody needing something. It's calling somebody knowing that they're going to do their best for you in that situation. Especially with all the shipping and, so many crazy things about the way that, we all think that, if Amazon Prime is running behind, and you can't get 2-day shipping for things, it's bad. And so that being magnified to these big expensive pieces of gear, but knowing that the other person on the other side of the line is doing their best for you, that was major. That was really helpful. We really appreciate that.
Anant, did anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think also just the fact that, like Caleb was mentioning, just developing that personal attribute and the personal friendship as we were going along. I think also really having that attachment to what he was doing and really being invested in how they were growing this. And I could tell that they were also figuring this out as they were going along. So being able to lean on my team and be able to provide that where Caleb didn't have to think about 7 other different things. I think that was a really, that was really rewarding for me as well, of course, in my career, and being able to kind of see how that could unfold and develop in such a short period of time. I think that was really valuable. And I think that's what I see every day as well, just in terms of the connections we make with the House of Worship market. I mean, I think just being a part of that world and going down and meeting people in those conferences and really learning about how they work and how they're kind of delivering their message. And once you have that personal touch as well with someone, that's just an added bonus to be able to kind of understand their world. So that was great. I think the one last thing I would just bring up is just that, like even the way, Caleb and I were connected. It was, I started working with his colleague, John David. And I think that's the other beautiful part about this whole thing is how once we have that personal relationship with one another, it's like how it expands on both sides, on Adorama's side and the church's side. And we're working with several different people now in there, within the church. So that just shows like the kind of longevity that comes from these particular instances where, you're helping someone within a week span when you're figuring it out, and then it kind of just grows from there. So that's the last note I'd like to add to that. So
I guess, our church is so, we've got 3 departments or 4 departments that all work with Adorama in different capacities. And having that, I go to John David because John David, they're on the creative team that's kind of, they deliver things to the entire church, all the, the kind of pre-recorded things. We've got broadcast, we've got creative, and then we've got us. But John David is somebody I really, really trust. So having, his recommendation on somebody was really important. And just having that relationship that the church had with Adorama as a whole, again, like I had a person I could talk to. That was a big deal.